don't know if I've seen that design yet.
What's happening, everybody? Joined here for our live stream on our third or fourth open mic of the week because I screwed up scheduling, but joined with my partner, Ryan Walsh, Hard Money Bankers Live. What's happening, Ryan?
Yo. How's everyone doing today?
So I thought today would be good because I used a nice, sweet, quick clickbait title being, what would I say? Noob to millions in 1 year. Q&A. So the clickbait part of that is that you didn't necessarily net millions of dollars within your first year, but you deployed millions. So,
Are we talking about me?
Yeah, we're talking. You're the noob. Yeah,
I'm the noob. Noob to millions.
Yeah. So you're the guy we're going to ask the Q&A to.
Gotcha.
Because I think it's really important because you were able to bridge a gap that could have taken other people 10, 15, 20 years, never accomplished it. And you were able to do it from a background of no real estate investing. I mean, really, I remember the first day in this, you were asking me what's a first lien position? What does that mean? Those kind of questions. And I was like, oh man, I bit off more than I can chew. But you did a lot of things right to get yourself to where you are now. So I want you to think back to the first year as I ask you some questions, and then we'll also talk about some current events and other fun stuff going on. But I think it's real. A lot of people that will watch this are going to be in the shoes or the mindset of I want to leave my job. I'm just getting into this. I mean, a lot of people aren't in the position where they're watching this going, I've been doing this for 20 years and making a bunch of money. They're looking at this, trying to figure out how they do that and how do you do it fast, efficiently, and smart, which is something you pulled off, which is really hard to do. You essentially crammed a very large period of time into a very small period of time due to your mind. So you get to be the noob to millions today. And if anybody has any questions out there, they're more than welcome to ask or join in the chat. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the first part, which is, you decided to come into business. You decided to leave a corporate background job in technology that had nothing to do with real estate. That was a completely secure job. And say, I want to go into real estate. I don't know anything about it, but it looks fun or looks whatever. So, talk about your mind, what your mind had to go through to transition into that position.
Yeah. I mean, so I left a 6-figure job, right? I had a stable income, 9 to 5. It was a good job. People will probably say you're crazy for leaving. Really what happened was, there was a Friday, I don't even know if you remember this, but there was a Friday that I wanted to go golfing with you, and you just could go do it. You're like, yeah, sure, let's go golfing. And I had to go ask my boss, I had to go get all these approvals to take a Friday off. And I couldn't. I had things I had to do at work, and my boss said, no, you really got to stay. So I was really pissed off. I felt like I want to be free, right? Because we had
You're pissed off at yourself, not your boss. You're pissed off at yourself for being in that situation, putting yourself in that situation.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
Correct. So it wasn't necessarily real estate or even the money that drew me here. It was the lifestyle that said I want to do this, right? Because I was in corporate for basically 10 years, and it's basically what it was. So. We spoke, you've seen me run businesses in other avenues, and you basically said to me, it's running a business. It's not the real estate that you need to know. It's the business and that you do have. So she said, all right, let's do it. Let's jump into real estate. And literally, I remember my first meetup, somebody asking me as a lender saying, what's your LTV? And I said, I don't know what LTV is, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, it's something that is not for everyone in the sense of making that leap. So I dabbled with real estate before I left my job. I wanted to see if it was something I thought I could do. And once I realized it's not the information that you need to know. You don't need to be an expert. You just have to believe that you can do it and that you're going to look like an idiot for a long time. Like when you have those conversations with somebody saying, I don't know what LTV is, you got to be ready for that. But that's for anyone who wants to make the leap into real estate, and not just real estate, but any career that you're looking to change. You do got to be the one to go make the jump. I would caution anyone, because a big thing with this that was hard is, and I see this with a lot of people, is they dabble in it and never make the full commitment into whether it's real estate or whatever the next part of their life is.
Yeah. Why do you think that? I think I know why. Why do you think that?
I mean, speaking from my personal experience, is it's scary. It's scary as hell, right?
Fear,
like,
right? Fear.
You got, especially when you're leaving something that's relatively stable. Not everyone has something that was as stable as me, but for the most part, it's like, yeah, you're risking everything. Like you're starting over. You're starting from zero. I mean, I worked my way up to get to that 6-figure job. It was like 10 years worth of work, basically, right? And in this, it was, you're going completely commission now, right? Which is, that in itself, if you're not used to, is very new. And if new is bad for you, you don't like change, then it's probably not for you, right? But I would 100% just say it's fear. You got to be ready to take the risk, and you got to be ready to fail, because what I always say is I've never failed, because I either win or I learn. So failure in my mind is just learning. So you got to be ready to learn.
Yeah, failure is like this word that like has this really negative connotation to it in our society. And I agree that I wish that's a good way to put it, because I wish I could stick some other sort of word associated with like the fact that all of growing life and business is just a series of quote unquote failures, but you could say it's a series of learning events. And basically you're just learning what didn't work. So then you're one step closer to what does work, and sometimes those amount of steps are much more than maybe you anticipated. But like every time you learn something doesn't work, what you've learned is something closer to what does work. But I think that's why people really say they embrace failure or whatever, but they want to be, I think there's something about like showing the guy on top of the mountain that failed a bunch of times either makes it relatable, or that using the word failure makes it seem more dramatic. But it's just the process of not quitting. It's just the process of not quitting and not making the same mistake twice.
Exactly. I do say I failed twice in my life, in my career at least. One, when I was 19 years old, I started an advertising company. I don't know if you remember that one, free college.
I very much remember that. It was one of the reasons I wasn't sure you and I could get into business together. I was afraid of round 2 of that.
I quit, right? I quit.
Not only did you quit, though, you quit at the most impacting moment, which really concerned me, which was like, we literally, you went through all the back work. So you went through like the building phase, which a lot of people go through. They go through the get ready to get ready phase, and they just get stuck in that. And you got everything ready. And then the first moment we walk on, and I'm like, hey, we got our first sale, just give them a call Monday. To me, that's like the moment of impact in my mind. And then boom, you never did it and shut it down. I was like, well, I don't think he's cut out to run a business. That was like, in my head, but yeah, you had to prove that differently. And I think you had to get through that. So anyway, so that was your first, moment in your life that you felt was a failure. Well, it was still a learning experience, because
in the end, it's a learning experience. Yeah. So here's the thing. If I didn't come to where I am today, in terms of starting my own business and pushing through that uncomfortable part that I failed pushing through that last time, it would have been a failure. Right. But I did actually learn from it, because if I hadn't gone through that before, I wouldn't have been able to do what I'm doing right now.
In fact, it probably would have cemented a bad habit. There was probably nothing more important than making sure you stepped over that line this time, because even if you didn't this time, twice, the third time probably would have been not going to happen, kind of thing. So
right.
Now, I didn't know that. Yeah, in my mind, being a partner with you, that was a significant moment to see if you were going to push through that, because nobody can do it for you.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's something, you can hear people talk about it, but until you get to that starting line yourself, you can say I'm going to do it, but until you get to that line, you got to test your character. Yeah, that's when it happens. The only other time I failed was with Gamer Proving Grounds. If you remember that, the gambling site I made. That one I probably would say is a failure, because I haven't learned anything from it yet. Well, actually, no, I take it back. I can tell you what I learned. I got stopped when I needed, I believed I needed about $50,000 to continue the business, to get a license. And I let that stop me. Instead of finding a way to make it happen or even raising the $50,000, I let it stop me. So,
yeah. So I think, in my opinion, on what I actually consider the first scenario way more traumatic, in the ability to stop you from pursuing your dreams than I did Gamer Proving Grounds. Gamer Proving Grounds, to me, what it did was it showed that you were like, the way you handled it well. Like, so I knew what to expect from you, like right up to that moment. And then the barrier to entry at that point, I knew that you didn't know enough, or, you know, how to get to that step. So like the barrier to entry was much harder than you anticipated, but you saw it through to that moment. And then you realized, okay, like might need cash, might need a gambling license, like all these things. You know, the idea was fantastic, but you took it right. You were prepared to go to that point. You were prepared, like you were ready to go over the line that you didn't cross the first time, which I think was more important. So then, you know, I knew if you were to do it a third time without me, you would have been more prepared for the barrier to entry into whatever you were trying to achieve. And that one you didn't really know up front because it was such new territory. It wasn't like real estate where I'm like, okay, this is what comes next. It was like we're paving like an industry that nobody has done it yet. So you didn't really know that was coming and you weren't prepared to handle it. But I don't know that you could have really have done too much differently at that moment in terms of trying to have that.
It's one of those I can only answer it honestly internally, because when you feel like you can quit and you're using an excuse,
yeah,
it's an internal thing, right?
That's right.
It's an internal. I use the excuse to quit, and
Okay.
the truth is, it got really hard. I didn't know the next step, and I gave up. Looking back on it, I wish I kept going and found a way. Because
you probably wouldn't end up here if you did. But who knows? You might have been bankrolling all hard money bankers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, but the lesson that I learned there is, even if there isn't a clear way, like you just keep going. It will show itself. You have to keep going every time. But anyway, that's the lesson I learned there. And then here, so what made me come to Hard Money Bankers was basically the formula added up from my previous experiences and from my corporate jobs. You know, I was like, it can work, whatever the industry is. I said, it can work if you are listening to somebody who has been where you are and is now where you want to be. So what I mean by that is you find somebody who was where you are now, like who started from level 1, right? Started there. Now they're on level 10 now, and you want to get to there so they can guide you specifically from where you are now to where you want to go. I think that was key to making this work compared to my other businesses. I did not have a mentor or somebody who knew the road before me on my previous adventures. And I think that was a key difference here. So I would highly encourage anyone who's going into real estate, even if you got to pay someone, you know, whatever it takes, you find somebody who was where that was in your shoes and that has proven it and has gotten the success that you want in your life. And then you just shut your mouth and do everything they say to the T. You know, you don't say, I know better than you for, I don't know.
Let's talk about that in a minute, that you're skipping ahead. So first thing, what's up, Antonio? How you doing? Welcome. So, okay, so you've established that you feel your path of learning is really what you think differentiates you from somebody not capable. Like you took a different approach to the learning methodology, which was humility is a big one. Seek out, you know, a mentor. Fortunately, you had me. You know, you don't need me. People don't need me, right? Necessarily. You just need somebody that, you know, you can trust and you really believe that they are where you want to be. And they probably also that they do it in a fashion that you want to do it in. I think your personality probably has to line up to it to be able to work with that mentor. Like, you know, not everybody could work well with me for sure. You know, like you have to know me or know what you're getting into. And so the personalities have to match because your risk temperament, I think, has to match for whether it's lending or any business. Like, I think you have to be able to, like, if I was taking huge risks in general, your personality would not fit well with that. And it would really make you uneasy. Whereas like the way we assess risk in this business is like small risk, you know, hit singles and doubles. That's how we do it. Right. So you're like, okay, cool. That matches. I can do this. But yeah, I think one thing that can't be underestimated, and I've seen this coming through as you've been working on it, And also can't be overestimated. Don't overestimate your mentor either. Like, I know I've done a lot in terms of helping you, but there's been a whole lot more you've done by yourself that you think that I've done that I have not done either. So I think people underestimate how strong they are a lot of times. And, but I was just getting to another point. That
I think it's important if you do find yourself in a mentor relationship, apprentice, master, to go the Star Wars route. It's important whether you are the apprentice or you are the mentor. I would recommend you take from this. You always want to recognize each other's contributions to the success of wherever you are today.
Sure.
It should be a mutual saying, "Hey, thanks," and also, "Hey, thanks, great job." Right? Like it's hand in hand. That's my ideal, at least. Partnership in terms of if you have to go the mentor route. So, I appreciate what you're saying, but I also don't discredit myself. I do believe, I've done a lot. So.
Yeah, I think, and that's the ultimate lesson out of this is the only thing that separates us, me or you, from anybody else is just mindset. Like, there's nothing special about us in general. Like, there's nothing unteachable with just people getting their own way. They convince themselves out of fear that they're not smart enough, not strong enough, they can't do it, or whatever it is. And once you really commit to that humility and like basically embrace the unknown, embrace the uncertainty of the moment, you're in a much better position, which sounds crazy. You're like, because you can't line everything up perfectly and you don't know what the future is going to bring, but like you have to have like an uncomfortable belief in yourself, which becomes more comfortable, I think, over time. You realize your capabilities are much more than initially thinking. But that first step, leaving your 6-figure job to come into a world that, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, can I imagine leaving this? Like, let's say hey, you want to come in this tech job, pays like $1 million a year or something, right? I'd look at that and go, I would know. I don't know if I'd have the self-belief at this moment. I'd really have to think about that to say, does it provide, is the lifestyle,
Here's the thing. Listen to what you're saying. You're not saying you couldn't do it. That never crossed your mind. You're saying, do I want to do it? Which is a very big difference between, I think, what most people face, right? A lot of it is the doubt that they could even do it.
I think I've never had self-doubt in the way that, like, I just look at it and go, like, look, like, everybody's the same. I don't care what anybody says. Everybody's the same. If one other person did this, I can do it. I don't really, whatever. Like, right? That's like the mindset. I never had like self-doubt. It's more just like, oh, it's going to take like 10 years to figure this out. It's more like, but I never go, man, that guy's better than me, or he's so much more elite than me. It's just not true for anybody, that looks at, I hope nobody looks at me in that capacity or you in that capacity, but like, because you have to just believe that you can do it because you can. That's it. That's the difference. It's just self-belief.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think a lot of it is maybe you can't do it the same way somebody else did it, right? If you take just raw intelligence or raw athleticism, right? But you can find a way that'll work for you. So, it's what we always say.
And I know I cut a longer, my path was longer, harder than it had to be when I look back. I don't look back and, like, if you ask me 12 years ago, how long it would take me, I would have been like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. And it took me a lot longer than that through a lot of mistakes in my own fault. So, I don't know. You're right. Everybody can take a different path, but everybody can get there. Just 100% of the people that do it will get there. And you're right. Some people have more resources. Some people might be a little bit smarter, a little bit more money, a few more connections. But like, if you just stay in the game, eventually you're going to win. Like, that's it. Just stay in the game. Right. So, okay, let me move on to the next one. I'd like to talk about executing on your beliefs. So you can believe something or want to believe something, but then taking the actual action part is where so people may not take action because of the fear, therefore they don't believe they can do it. But taking talk about the actionable steps. Like, one of the things I know that was and it's a lot of anxiety built around it too. And it's also new, your first networking event to me was like, that's like whatever, a networking event. To you, you walked into a room full of aliens speaking a different language, and you're like, and I'm like, just go do it. Just go have a drink. Go do it. So like that was an action item. That was like a big moment for you. Looking back, it seems silly, but not silly, but like it seems trivial. So talk about like the action items, the execution items, and how you approach them.
Well, it's like anything that you're trying to learn. It's all about forming the habits. When you're doing something new, you have to be ready to be bad, really bad at it. I think most of us in life have played Little League soccer, at least if you're in America. You're probably on a team. Even when you're 5 years old, your parents say, go kick a ball around, right? Remember how bad you were? You're just terrible. Whatever you know about soccer, you were awful then, right? But you weren't thinking about it when you were a kid. You were just thinking like, I'm going to have fun, right? And you did have fun. The same mentality needs to happen whether you're changing a career or just trying to learn something new. It's the same concept. You're going to go out there, you're going to kick a ball with your toe, possibly even break your toe, and you're going to be silly, but you're going to get better at it. So whatever the action item is, I would say be careful if you're spending certain resources that you have allocated, meaning money. You don't want to just spend, but in terms of just doing things like going to networking events and meeting people, talking conversations, being an idiot, saying, I don't know what that means. It's okay. It's okay to be new. I think that maybe a fear is people don't want to be the noob, and that's okay. You don't want to be the noob, but it's okay to be the noob if you're trying to get better at something.
Yeah, you know what it is? Because it sucks when people around you, you feel that they're above you in a knowledge perspective, and people like to have an ego and feel they're above people. So like that relationship is awkward. It sucks, like to think of. But if you reframe your mind into more of just a humoring situation and realizing everybody in this room has been there at one point, like you have to reframe your brain going into it, and then it's not so bad. It's real. But if you enter it thinking like, this is like an ego fest and it's who's got the biggest, or bank account, whatever you want, you're in trouble going into that. But you reframed your mind to approach these action items that you were unfamiliar with.
No, I think it's a really good point. You got to reframe your mind. Well, let me just go off of what Ethan has here. It seems as though it's more of just a motivation than anything. That is 100% correct. It's not even the action item that I was doing that was important. It was the mindset towards it, and then whatever the outcome comes from it. It's not the specific action that's important in all of this, right? It's the mindset that'll bring you to your goal. That's the most important thing out of all of this. So,
I think if people wanted to practice that at like on a day-to-day level, think about if you're not an extrovert, if you're an introvert in general, which a lot of people are, I know I certainly can be, and you think of like an event that you don't want to go to, a social event, make it a family event. Maybe you don't want to go to like some sort of family event, and you have all these thoughts in your mind that build up, that you allow to build up, and they're like, it's going to suck, and I'm going to be awkward. I don't want to talk to this guy. I don't want to talk to that girl, whatever. Like this is the preconceived notion that I have walking into it. How many times have you thought that you had anxiety going into it, and then when you come home, you're like, oh, that was pretty fun. like right, because you didn't. If you just reframed your mind going into it, and you're like, it's gonna have a
could have been enjoyable the whole way.
Could have been totally fine the whole way, and that mindset wears people down in business if you don't change it. So where a social event, you're like once every 6 months, it's mandatory. It's a family member. You let your anxiety build up, but in business, that it's being new in business or new into an industry, that happens daily, minutely, so your mind is what differentiates, and then stops you from quitting. That's the only thing, right? So I never knew, especially in the first few months with you, never really knew if I was going to get the phone call that you can't do this. I don't know. I wasn't not expecting that. I wasn't saying I was expecting it, but I wouldn't have been surprised because it's such a change for most people. I think you also showed a lot of grit because you had a really tough time when, something that's not to be underestimated either is when you go from a 9-to-5 job into the world that I've been living in for so long, which is like, people are like, what do you do as a full-time investor every day? Or how do your days set? And they ask me these questions. I'm like, I get up, I have a routine. This is what I do. And I'm like, I don't punch a clock. This is just what I do. And, that was a shell shock to you coming from a 9-to-5 punch your clock world, right? So talk about that.
Yeah, it's kind of the always on mentality, which is a shift. Um, because when you're at your 9 to 5 job, if you've just had it for that day, you can turn your phone off and you're like, whatever, I'll deal with it tomorrow. When you enter this world, if you turn your phone off, that means you're getting less money. It means your paycheck's being hit. So there's a difference between like that on-off switch that I think most people who are not used to the real estate type world have to adjust to. And it is an adjustment, and it was a big change. You don't realize the mental challenge that you're going to go through during that. There's just so many things. Like, for example, not being in the 9 to 5, I didn't have to sit in 2 hours of traffic every day. So I got 2 hours extra time to my day every day. And that sounds great, and it is great now. Don't get me wrong, but when all of a sudden you have 2 hours extra every day in your life, you start having to fill that time in. It's just things you never would have thought about that start coming up. And the key is that when you are going through this, because everybody's going to go through it differently. I'm sure everyone has their own version of this. Just the key is, I'm going to keep harping on it. You don't quit. You push through that. It does get better. And you do hit the lifestyle that you're going for. So I don't know if that answered your question directly there.
Yeah,
but
good. No, that's good. I think it's, the moral of the story is always going to come back to don't quit. Like, find a way to grit your way through it, to embrace that battle scar that you're going to have one day of understanding of how you got here. And then it also is extremely empowering moving forward, right? Like, your ability, every time you win one of those scenarios, the next time it comes up, you're way more empowered as an individual. As Rich said, two things that can't be taught: ambition and work ethic. And, if you stick a strong enough carrot out, I feel like if you stick a strong enough carrot in front of anyone, they hopefully will move towards that carrot. It depends what the carrot is, and depends on how focused they are. And it honestly depends on how much pain they're in. I always find the pain threshold is really important for people. Like, and I don't mean pain like physical pain necessarily. I mean like life pain. How uncomfortable are you and how focused are you on that carrot in front of you? So I think
what's the carrot in what you're saying? It's the goal, right?
Goal, right? Yeah.
So I think even work ethic that Rich just said, I think it's ambition and goal setting, because if your goals aren't right, if they aren't something that motivate you to put the right carrot in front of you, your work ethic's going to be shit. So it's the combination of the two. You set the right goals, and then you set the work ethic out to get it.
Yeah, I'm with that. I think that's a great point. So, what else would you leave people with, right? Like, what do you want to talk about? People, how do you, in 1 year's time, like, what would you say is was your particularly biggest impact on all this, or in terms of like what you felt was the most impacting mental thing along the whole road?
So every day, even to my left here, I have my own charts. I'm tracking my progress, and it's literally an every day you're chipping away at this stone. So do something every day. And I don't mean Monday through Friday. I mean every day, 7 days a week. Do something towards your goal, even if it's little. Some days you're going to be better than others. The key is to just mentally think about your goal every day. From that usually comes some sort of action, but the key is to mentally get ready for it. And then the rest just happens over time. The speed of how fast it happens is going to be dependent on how much you do every day. But if you do something every day for a year, you're going to be further along than you were if you did nothing for a year, right? So even if you haven't gone full time into real estate yet, and you're still dabbling, still do something every day. And eventually you are going to come to the point where you're going to make the decision of, I'm going to do it or I'm not going to do it. So the key is to just do something every day, or think about it every day at least. And I even say, even if you go fishing on a Saturday, that can be for your business, because you might say, I need a day to decompress, right? So don't rule out your rest days as not doing something. Rest is just as important as applying energy. The story is of these two axemen who are cutting trees, and one axeman's cutting for 12 hours a day, and he cuts 10 trees. The other axeman is only cutting for 4 hours a day, but he cuts 40 trees. So the two axemen were talking. He said, "How are you doing? How are you cutting 4 times as much as me in a quarter of the time?" Right? He says, "Well, I rest, I eat, and I sharpen my axe." And that applies to your business as well. You don't want to overdo it. You don't want to do more rest than you could. You have to learn yourself and what kind of energy you can apply to keep staying energetic and growing your business.
Gotcha. I think it's good advice. Here's a good one. Here's what Rich has. Yeah, so Rich says, I've seen people with goals with no work ethic getting nothing done. That said, I write down annual goals on a whiteboard. Yeah, there is something, Rich. I don't know how to, I agree with you. Like there's something that sometimes just clicks with people, maybe it's the background, how they grew up. Maybe it's something that like, I had no work ethic until I was no, I don't want to say that. I was always focused on a goal. Always. Okay. I was always able to focus my mind. In fact, I prefer to be focused on a goal, whether it's money or anything like that. It's just how I work. But like, I think I would have been considered pretty lazy up until about the age of like 16 or 17. I didn't have those goals in front of me, and then it turned over. Ryan probably would have been considered lazy till about the age of like early 20s. Right. So like, I don't know if there's something about the way people are raised that like work ethic is, but once you match the goal with the already possible work ethic that's in there, I think that's when things really change for people. And I think the work ethic can be buried inside of people sometimes. And when you get that goal in front of them, it just ignites the fire, when the goal becomes clear and their mind gets focused on it. But I do believe that some people just don't have work ethic either. I just think it just like, they don't have it. They don't want to learn it. It just comes hand in hand, which is it's just not going to happen. So,
yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I'm sure that is the case. I just think people you got to learn how to write proper goals. Because if you write your goal, I want $1 million, but you don't believe it, you're not going to take any action on it. But if you say, I want $10 more, and you're like, I could do that. Yeah. Now you're setting yourself up to go succeed. Your goals will increase as you take more action, but it depends on the goal you're right. Because I agree. People write down goals all the time and then they don't do shit about it. I just think they're not setting goals that the goal has to excite you and you have to believe you can do it. Those are the two things to any goal. If it doesn't excite you, you're not going to do it. If you don't believe you can do it, you're also not going to do it. Otherwise, right. You find the sweet spot of setting goals and you'll become those machines, those people that you're like, man, they stop at nothing. You can do that. You just got to start working on the skill set of setting the right goals.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think it is a skill. I guess it is a skill set when you think about it. It's not.
But it's an internal skill set because only you can judge how you feel towards a given goal, right? You can't lie. You can't the result is the lie. So if you say, yeah, no, I believe it, but I didn't do anything, then you lied on your goal setting. You didn't believe it or you weren't excited about it.
Yeah, self-reflection, I think, is a huge part. Being honest with yourself is probably the most important part. I think, we see it every day. And in our line of business, when people are calling you up, telling you what a property is going to sell for and how much they're going to do construction for, and when they talk to them in their voice, that you're like, that I know that that this isn't going to work with these numbers. Like, it, but you won't admit it to yourself. And that's a really important thing, is to be able to admit stuff to yourself, like when something is or isn't going to work. And I think that's one thing that we've kind of, I don't know if it's a Walsh thing or what, but like we've talked about this, we can compartmentalize our emotions from our decision making very well, where it's like we like take the heart pumping part of us and put it over here, and then take the logical part and put it over here, and then make a decision based on the logical part as long as it fits like our moral boundaries and code. So it's hard to say what is always the right thing to do, but I always find that the one thing that makes a sound decision is when you're being honest with yourself. It's really hard to make good decisions if you're not honest with yourself. So, all right, let's talk about lighten it up with some news topics.
Rich commented there. He writes his goals down the week between Christmas and New Year's.
So no, so Rich is just like a natural born. I know Rich. So the guy is born with work ethic. You could tell it came from his whole family. Like I don't know his brother, I don't know his father, but I guarantee you the story starts with, those guys also having very strong work ethics. Like it's a hard thing to like quantify, in a family or something like that, right? Like it's just goals and beliefs, is what it comes down to. And like you said earlier, I think.
Yeah, I like the self reflection every year with the goals like that. It just resets you every year of what you're going for, whether it's a financial goal or a lifestyle goal. It doesn't matter. You're thinking about it, and now everything you do, every decision you make for the rest of the year is going to say, is this getting me closer to my goal or not? It's such an easy way to self guide your decisions for the rest of the year.
Right. Is this or is this not part of the picture that I set out to? And if it's not, wipe it, gone, don't need it.
Yeah.
So, man, this is a weird interview. So I'm compartmentalizing my brain while I trade the markets right now. So that's why as you see me looking up, I don't know if you're picking that up, right?
I am. That's why I'm trying to talk longer when I see your eyes up there.
I'm pretty impressed with my own management here because I've taken a profitable trade with full concentration while words are coming out of my mouth. I don't necessarily know what I'm saying, but words are coming out of my mouth. So that's good, I think. Don't know if they're good words or not. But you'll know that if like these appointments are going to have to stop in the event that I take a bad trade or I miss a trade because I'll freak out and then you're on your own from there on out. So
that's how you know you have a good rhythm with your radio show partner when you got to talk a little more just based on the way their eyes are looking.
yeah, I knew. I kind of thought you were picking up on that because like you were elongating your answers. So yeah. Anyways, so let's talk about some none of this is lighter, but some news topics because I want to use my shared screen. So we're gonna use shared screen.
The world wants to know though. Did you make money on the trade?
I did, world. Right. Setting up for another one right now while I do my shared screen. Man, technology nowadays, huh? So this is why don't you talk about, this is an article discussing what we kind of went back and forth with internally with Hard Money Bankers last night. The partners were going over like, why haven't we really seen like a massive, like the whole world is ending, but the real estate market seems to be just doing just fine at the moment. Like, why? Like, how is that possible? So the theory is that we talked about last night is, is it possible that the supply and demand lower each other at the same time and don't affect or don't ruin the pricing? And I thought about it for a second. I was like, I guess in theory that could work. Like it seems unlikely, but in theory and the right balance, that would work. I would say this article
it's saying if supply drops and demand drops, price is not moving.
Yeah. Which is like a concept I don't think anybody really thought of, which was like one has to unbalance the other. We're all fucked. Like that's what has to happen. But it's like, well, wait a minute. Like, what if they just drop together at the same time? So I thought it was a really interesting concept. We talked about it last night, and this article kind of goes into that. And it's like, goes into the numbers as to like, okay, supply is dropping and demand's dropping. And really all you're doing is like balance. You're just balanced because usually it's an imbalance that causes it. So I didn't really think, I don't think it crossed any of our minds that balance was a possibility. I don't know how long balance can last in this scenario, but at the moment, I think we have, and watch me jinx myself as like, like it all just goes to garbage like a Monday or something.
Yeah, nothing to worry about.
Nothing to worry about. But at the moment, there's a weird balance that it feels like in the marketplace. And that's the only way I'd be able to describe, I think, what we're seeing at this point for now, right? Like, balance would be the word.
So I think that's accurate in terms of the pricing. And for investors who do fix and flips or lenders, it's okay for us. I think the people who are still possibly getting hurt would be your realtors, because that just means their sales volume is going to be down.
Yeah. I guess I don't want to say, I want to say I think I was just more reflecting it, not so much as the people that would be affected by it,
Just
but
on the
as
price.
like just pricing. Yeah, just simple pricing. Because like the natural expectation was that pricing has to drop. Now I'm still not convinced that we're immune from that because it's still early in this whole process. But it was just an idea or a concept that I thought was interesting to even think of being a possibility.
Sure.
Yeah, so there is a third option, which is not bad, not a bad option, all considered. And usually the not so bad option is usually the one that doesn't work out. But for the moment, I think we're in balance. I think we're in harmony in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think the next 2 years are going to be real interesting. We'll be following it closely. Are we going to see any sort of rise and fall, or is the supply and demand going to stay even keel? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here.
Agreed. All right. So next one, I think we'll do a quick update on this. So this is the hottest topic in all of news in all the world right now, which is the not all of the world, but in Minneapolis with the George Floyd scenario. And then so we're on day 3. They've called in the National Guard. Shots have been fired. There was a video out this morning of a guy that looked suspicious. Did you see this video of the guy that was breaking the windows?
Potential
riot inciter. Like
riot,
what is going on in this world right now? So there's some craziness happening, and I know we discussed it behind the scenes this morning. We won't go into too much detail on the opinion, or we can, I guess, whatever. But like the reality is, like, what are people supposed to do? I don't agree that necessarily like violence meets violence is a good answer. I don't think that's a great solution for anything. But I am curious to know, like, what do you expect? What does the establishment that essentially the government, right, that put this, that the police officers being the government, what do they expect the people to do? Like, you haven't given anybody a better outlet or better solution to the scenarios at hand, right? Like, that's the biggest concern here. So I go, until you offer a better solution, I don't see how these riots don't continue.
I'm with you. I mean, Hong Kong has been doing it for the last 6 months. There's been, and not just Hong Kong, it's been, Venezuela, India. It's just shocking because the US is like, oh wait, we're rioting now. It's been going on around the world. Like it's exactly what you're saying. Like, what are the options? What are the options? Period. That we
like we don't have
go back to our home and let it happen.
Yeah, everybody would love a B plan, right? Like everybody would love, like, cool, we're being heard in Congress. Things are changing. There's clearly, we may not agree, but there's action in the right direction. Like, the one thing that I I've been happy to see personally is that, we've had a lot of these, police are starting to say, look, we need to stand up as a group and say, we don't condone these actions. Like, this is not us. And
Right.
we need to be vocal about it and loud. And like, that is right. That is true. Like, I don't believe all policemen are bad people. Like, that's not what I think. And by any means, in fact, I know a lot of good policemen. I do think, though, that because of what the scenario at hand, they probably feel they should kind of have a responsibility to speak as a whole and be louder than the average person to say, we're going to help you. Like, my thought would be, and this is just like an idea, but if I were to speak as a police community as a whole, I'd be searching out people like that. I'd be weeding out rats like that in the group and be like, you're not cut out to be a policeman. You don't stand the moral code. You've got 18, like this guy that did this had like 18 complaints about him or something. It's like, 2 and done, 0 for racism, 0 for this. Like, it's like the boundary or how strict or like what the honor it is to represent, in that capacity is completely diminished and diluted at this point.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. It's I mean, what I don't know is if like every police officer has a certain amount of complaint. Like, is 18 a lot? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I don't know, because like you said, we know good cops who are legitimately, they have the moral code that you're referring to, and I think that's what it is. I think the moral code is just in question right now. As a society, I'd say over the last 100 years, we've been going upwards for most trends, which is great. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's where it needs to be. I get the whole kneeling thing and whatnot. Like, I get it. But we still have ways to go. And I think you're right. It does come from those who are supposed to be on the moral high ground. They're in a position to enforce it right now. And I think now is the time when people are asking for it, for them to come, because maybe before people were saying we need this, right? They may not have been in position to say to their sergeant, hey, X, Y, and Z is really messing up out there. The sergeant would have been like, keep it quiet, right? But right now, I think now that it's out in the public, it might be the time to kind of say, I don't think Officer John Smith, fits our moral code.
Yeah, and honestly, like, look at it as more of like an elite club of people. Like be what it's supposed to be. Your job is to protect civilians. Like, it's not just I can't go to college. I'm going to come out of school. I'm 18 and I'm going to sign up for the police academy. Like, make it an elite group of human beings that operate under a strict moral code. What's wrong with that? Like, be proud of that, in my opinion. Like, you have to do what's hard that other people can't do, and be proud. And the harder it is, the more honorable it is, as opposed to what I think being a policeman has really become for a lot of people. Now, it's not for everybody. There's a lot of policemen that take a lot of pride in what they do, and they signed up not for the just to get a job. They signed up because they were here to protect civilians, and that was why they went about this. But I think for that needs to maybe just be somehow governed better, or people should not govern. No, people should govern themselves and understand and take it upon themselves to hold themselves to that moral code. That's really what needs to happen. How much of that is possible, I don't know. Situations like this force people into those situations. I think it force people to think like that. It doesn't just allow people to, hide. You can't hide, right? Every day you put that badge on, you're a policeman, whether you want to, or not. So, like, change the outlook that policemen have in this country, and it's going to start with the policemen, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough because it is, this one. Assuming it is a bad cop, I don't know enough about the situation, honestly, to condemn him myself. But assuming he is a bad egg, it does suck because you might have 1,000 good cops out there and one bad one. But it's time those 1,000 good cops have to stand up against that one bad cop right now.
Yeah, and do and more of like future action, I think, is really important too, which is not just like the current scenario. The current scenario needs to be handled properly, in my opinion, but the future action, stop that from happening again, starts with changing the actions and the outlook today, I believe.
And I think they need to share that with the public and tell especially the people of Minneapolis, here's what we're going to do to make sure that we never see that again. Right now, it's very much just send the National Guard in, stop the looting. It's like, well, why would they stop? Give them a reason to stop, in the sense of, here's what we're going to do. At
the moment, you're just meeting more force with force, and you're just creating larger fire. And that's like, it's just combustion. So I'm going to skip one more topic here. So this was an interesting read I had this morning. So I'm a big fan of, obviously, the markets, and I didn't think of this. So the trading pits have traditionally always been, I don't know if you've ever seen a trading pit in like Wall Street or something, or like in Chicago, but
like the 90s.
Yeah, but they still exist. They very much still exist. They're not nearly what they once were, because most of the trading has moved over to computers, but they're still very prominent, heavy slingers in the marketplace. They move a lot of volume. They move markets around, no question. So Chicago really has become the heart of that environment. And since COVID, I didn't think of this. Social distancing doesn't work in the pits, right? So yell. So yeah, well, one of the things this is a rowdy Chicago pits racing and reopen. I don't think it's an extinction thing. I think it's just a headline, clickbait. But the reality is the CME, which is the exchange group out there, they obviously stopped the pits to reopen. And one of the mandatory parts of the group is that the pits, in order to stay open, have to account for 30% of all volume done, which is a ton. 30% of volume done in a marketplace is, you're moving the market. And before COVID, it was at 50%. So they have to be at 30%. But then the question now becomes, when they reopen, or when will they reopen? Because that means right now, a lot of these markets, technically speaking, are probably off their volume by about 30 to 50% because these guys aren't in there. Your brokers aren't in there. So I thought it was really interesting, which means there's a huge portion of big players that are not involved in the marketplace right now, just due to like social distancing. And they're saying, will it reopen? I think it's forcing, some of the other, I think somewhere down here, it's something, people are talking about, some people are like, screw the pits. I don't want to deal with the pits. It's ancient anyway. Other people are like, the pits need to be here. A lot of the hedge funds and high frequency trading companies are like, great, screw the pits. Like, we don't need them anyway. So I don't know if we're going to have like, is this the final stone that like the old school pit traders don't make it back? Or I don't think so. I think they'll be back. I think they'll be back just fine. I don't care. These guys, these are like the generalized personality that most people, the stereotypical personality of a pit trader is like your alpha male, they're at war, like borderline pigs, type guys. That's a stereotype. So if these guys have to put on a mask and scream through each other, these guys will be ripping their masks off of each other and stuff. Like, it's a very rowdy bunch of people, to say the least. So I don't think it's the end of it, but
I assume we'll see a massive decrease, just like how in real estate, it's like the virtual tours are going to be a thing. Yeah, regular tours are still going to happen, but you're probably not going to have 100 people on one weekend anymore.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's a declining piece of history in the markets, and it's going to lead to death, or it just will eventually grow back up, or it'll change. I don't know.
The same conversation is happening with sheriff sales.
Yeah, that's true too. True too. Yeah, for the real estate world, that's and I think, didn't we talk to somebody that said Florida is already on?
They've been there for a while, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, it's crazy. I don't know if you've ever been to a sheriff sale ride, but I can't believe that it's not online to begin with. That was shocking to me. That I'm like, why isn't this being done online again? There's a lot of guys in there and girls in there that are old, that are just baby boomer and up generation. So I guess there was probably no hurry up towards that. But as the technological generation really moves in, it seems extremely natural for it to just not be in person.
Yeah, I mean, the chat
and all that.
Yeah, I thought I just remembered who it was. But anyway, they were saying that the challenge with that, though, is it opens it up to the world.
Yeah. It was your guy.
That's who we were talking to.
I don't think, honestly, that it's as much. You still have to know your market to bid on the real estate.
I can see it happening in the New York area. I could definitely see it happening around here.
Some areas, yeah. Some sections could be like people just want to own, like, because it's like, but the majority of like the entire nation switched over. In your blue collar neighborhoods, the chances that you're going to lose a bet to some guy in East Jabip, because he's got more money than he knows what to do with. Maybe it happens 1 out of every 100 deals, and does he even send the money? I don't know. So like, it won't happen that often. But yeah, like your chic, like Bel Air or Manhattan, like not all of Manhattan, more of like exclusive areas of Manhattan could be bought overseas for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But your 1 out of 100 sales won't do that, in my opinion. So yeah, I think it's a good talk today. I think I don't think we have any more questions lingering. So we'll hop back on Monday. I think we got a bunch of guests scheduled for next week if I don't screw it all up, and we'll go from there.
Rich, Antonio, and Ethan, feel free to email me your t-shirt size and address. Ryan at hardmoneybankers.com. Emails right below me, and you will be sent a free t-shirt.
Sounds good. All right, later.